Welcome back, guys, to Military Paranormal Time. 66% of you still haven't subscribed. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. Thank you. I still remember the cold bite of that phone receiver against my ear. February 2001. I was 22, just a kid, really, wearing the uniform less than 8 months. Private First Class Danny Hutchinson, communications specialist, which was just a fancy way of saying I kept radios working and typed up reports nobody read. Danny, that you, sweetheart? My mother's voice crackled through the static, warm as summer back in Ohio, even through 1,000 miles of frozen telephone wire. Yeah, Ma, it's me. I tried to keep my voice steady, tried not to let her hear the cold seeping into my bones, even inside the communications hut at Elmendorf Air Force Base. When are you coming home? Your father's been asking. Says the hardware store's busier than ever. Could use your help come spring. I closed my eyes. The hardware store. Rows of paint cans and lumber. The smell of sawdust and motor oil. A world away from where I was headed. I don't know, Ma. They're sending me north, way north. Some research support detail near the Beaufort. The Beaufort? Lord, Danny, that's practically the North Pole. It's just temporary. Couple weeks, maybe less. I'll be back before you know it. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear my kid sister Beth singing in the background. Some new radio song she'd been obsessed with. Life happening while I sat in this gray building, waiting for orders I didn't fully understand. You be careful up there, Ma finally said. I don't like you going to places that cold. Remember when you were 7 and got frostbite on your ears? I remember, Ma. I'll wear a hat this time, promise. We said our goodbyes, I love yous and be safes. When I hung up, the silence of the communications hut pressed down harder than before. The fluorescent lights hummed their empty tune. I stared at the wall, at the map of Alaska pinned there with red markers showing outposts and stations scattered across the white expanse. Sergeant William Bill Morrison walked in, boots heavy on the floor. He was maybe 35, face weathered like old leather, eyes that had seen things he didn't talk about. He'd served in the Gulf, did 2 tours nobody asked him about. Now he ran communications for whatever operations command dreamed up in their warm offices. Hutchinson, he said, not looking at me, shuffling through a stack of files. You packed? Yes, Sergeant. Gear's ready. Good. We ship out 0600. Lieutenant Commander Ellen Shaw is running point. She's strict, follows protocol to the letter. Don't give her reasons to notice you. Understood. Morrison finally looked up, studied me for a second too long. You ever been that far north? No, Sergeant. It's different up there. The cold. It does things to your head. Makes you see things that aren't there. Hear things. He paused, jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't spit out. Just keep your head down and do your job. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. The way he said it made my stomach tighten. What kind of questions, Sergeant? He turned back to his files, shoulders stiff. The kind that keep you up at night long after you leave that ice. I wanted to press him, wanted to ask what he meant, but the door swung open. A corporal I didn't recognize poked his head in, face flushed from the cold outside. Sergeant Morrison, command needs you. Something about the manifest for tomorrow. Morrison grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. He stopped in the frame, didn't turn around. Hutchinson? Yes, Sergeant. Call your mother again before we leave. Tell her you love her one more time. Then he was gone, boots echoing down the corridor. I sat there in the empty hut, the hum of the lights suddenly too loud, the map on the wall suddenly too vast. My hands shook, and it wasn't from the cold. I should have called her back right then. Should have told her I loved her twice, 3 times, 100 times, but I didn't. I just sat there, staring at that map, at the red marker labeled Helios Outpost, wondering what the hell I was walking into. The transport plane rattled like it was held together with wishes and duct tape. I sat strapped into the canvas seat, trying not to think about how thin the metal walls were between us and the frozen void outside. The engine noise drowned out everything except your own thoughts, and mine were running wild. Across from me sat Corporal James "Jimmy" Dalton, a medic from Tennessee with a southern drawl thick as molasses. He had kind eyes, the type that put wounded men at ease. He was reading a worn paperback, some detective story with a blonde on the cover. Every few minutes, he'd glance up at the rest of us, checking vitals without needing to touch anyone. Good medics could do that. Next to him, Private Eugene McCarthy chewed gum like his life depended on it. Eugene was our equipment specialist, built like a linebacker, hands big enough to palm a basketball. He'd been cracking jokes since we boarded, but they'd gotten quieter as we flew north. Now he just stared at his boots, jaw working that gum to death. Sergeant Morrison sat near the cockpit, face unreadable, arms crossed tight. He hadn't said a word since takeoff. Whatever he knew about this mission, he was keeping it locked down deep. Then there was Private First Class Vincent Kozlowski, our survival specialist. Quiet, serious, always watching. He had this intensity about him that made people uncomfortable. I'd heard rumors he'd spent time in some classified operation in the Balkans. Nobody asked him about it. Something in his eyes said he wouldn't answer anyway. Lieutenant Commander Ellen Shaw moved through the cargo hold like she owned it, checking equipment, reviewing manifests, her face carved from stone. She was maybe 40, short dark hair, shoulders squared like she was perpetually at attention. When she looked at you, you felt measured and found wanting. 15 minutes, she called out over the engine noise. Check your cold weather gear. I won't repeat myself. We did as ordered. I pulled on the extra thermal layer, checked my gloves, my face mask, the heating packs Morrison had shoved into my pack that morning. My fingers fumbled with the straps. Jimmy noticed. First time this far north? He asked, voice gentle. Yeah. It ain't so bad once you get used to it. Just don't breathe too deep when you first step out. Cold'll freeze your lungs if you're not careful. Eugene leaned forward, that gum still working. What I want to know is what the hell we're supporting up here. They said research team, but research teams don't usually need this much comms equipment. He nodded at the crates strapped down in the back, all labeled with codes I didn't recognize. We follow orders, Private. Shaw's voice cut through the cabin. She'd heard him from 20 feet away somehow. We don't speculate. Eugene shut his mouth, but his eyes said plenty. The plane began its descent, the angle steep enough to make my stomach drop. Through the small window, I caught my first glimpse of the ice. Endless, white, hostile. It stretched in every direction like the earth had given up on anything else. No trees, no roads, no signs of life. Just frozen wasteland under a gray sky that looked like it had forgotten what color meant. Jesus, Eugene whispered. The plane shook harder as we dropped altitude. Wind buffeted us from all sides. The pilot fought the stick. I could feel it in how the aircraft jerked and swayed. Shaw grabbed a support strap, didn't even blink. Vincent Kozlowski was staring out the window, jaw tight. For just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Fear? No, not quite. Recognition, maybe. Like he'd seen places like this before and didn't want to see them again. Morrison caught me watching Vincent. Our eyes met. He gave the smallest shake of his head. A warning. The landing gear deployed with a mechanical groan. The plane dropped fast, faster than any landing I'd experienced. We hit hard, skidding across ice, the whole aircraft screaming in protest. Equipment rattled in the cargo hold. Jimmy's paperback flew across the cabin. Then we stopped. Silence filled the space, heavier than the engine noise had been. Shaw stood, straightened her jacket, and looked at each of us in turn. "Welcome to Outpost Helios," she said, voice flat. "Remember your training, follow protocol, and whatever you see out there..." She paused, something flickering behind those stone-cold eyes. "Whatever you see, you report to me first, understood?" "Yes, ma'am," we responded in unison. But I noticed she didn't say, "Whatever you think you see." She said, Whatever you see. And somehow, that made all the difference. The cold hit me like a physical punch when the cargo door opened. Jimmy had warned me, but nothing prepares you for that first breath of Arctic air. It burned going down, turned my lungs into ice chambers. I doubled over coughing while Eugene slapped my back. "Shallow breaths, kid," he said. "Shallow and slow." I nodded, couldn't speak, just focused on not collapsing. Around me, the others moved with practiced efficiency. Vincent was already hauling gear, face wrapped tight against the wind. Morrison coordinated the unload with 2 technicians who'd emerged from the nearest structure, both looking half-frozen and entirely miserable. Outpost Helios was exactly as grim as I'd imagined. A collection of prefab huts hunched against the endless white, half buried in snow berms that looked permanent. Fuel bladders wrapped in torn netting. A small antenna field that swayed in the constant wind. Everything painted in shades of gray and white, like color had surrendered to the cold. The wind never stopped. That's what got to me first. It pushed and pulled, a living thing with intent, carrying snow that stung exposed skin like needles. I pulled my face mask tighter and followed the others toward what looked like the command structure. Inside was barely warmer, but at least the wind couldn't reach us. A diesel heater chugged in the corner, fighting a losing battle. Dr. Theodore Brennan stood near a table covered in maps and charts. He was maybe 50, with wire-rimmed glasses that kept fogging up. Glaciologist, Morrison had told me. Smart as hell, but wound too tight. "Commander Shaw," Brennan said, shaking her hand quickly. "Good flight?" "We're here, that's what matters." Shaw stripped off her outer gloves. "Status?" "Unusual, very unusual." Brennan pushed his glasses up, pointed at a chart. "The satellite readings we've been tracking, they're getting stronger, denser. And there's these vibrations at night, low frequency, almost subsonic. The ice is doing something it shouldn't." Next to him stood Dr. Sarah Reeves, marine biologist, younger than Brennan, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had her arms crossed tight, clearly skeptical about the whole operation. "Commander, I'll be direct," Reeves said. "I don't understand why I'm here. There's no marine life this far north this time of year. Nothing survives here. Whatever you're looking for, it's not biological." Shaw's expression didn't change. "Command believes otherwise. You'll do your job, Doctor." The tension in that room could have been cut with a knife. Jimmy caught my eye and raised an eyebrow. We both knew something was off about this whole setup. 2 technicians worked in the corner, specialists Marcus Webb and Peter Holland, both hunched over radar equipment that blinked and hummed. They looked exhausted, like they hadn't slept in days. Webb kept rubbing his eyes, muttering about signal interference. "The readings are consistent," Brennan continued, oblivious to or ignoring Reeves' frustration. "Deep beneath the ice shelf, approximately 2 kilometers out, something massive, perfectly preserved. The density readings suggest organic matter, but that's impossible given the depth and age of those ice layers." "Nothing's impossible, Doctor," Shaw said quietly. "That's why we're here." Vincent Kozlowski had been silent since we entered, standing near the back, watching everyone. I noticed he kept glancing at Morrison, like they were having a conversation nobody else could hear. Morrison's face stayed blank, but his shoulders were rigid. Eugene nudged me, whispered low. "You notice how nobody's asking the obvious questions?" "Like what?" "Like what happened to the last team that was here. See those supply crates?" He pointed to a stack near the far wall. "Tags are dated 6 months ago. Fresh supplies don't sit that long unless people leave in a hurry." I looked closer. He was right. Dust covered everything except the equipment actively being used. The place had the feel of somewhere abandoned and reluctantly reoccupied. Jimmy moved to one of the bunks, ran his hand over the frame. "Somebody left personal effects," he said quietly, holding up a small photograph. A family, man, woman, 2 kids, all smiling. He set it down carefully like it was sacred. Shaw noticed. Focus on current operations, Corporal Dalton. The past is irrelevant. Yes, ma'am. But Jimmy's face said he disagreed. Dr. Brennan clapped his hands together, trying to inject enthusiasm nobody felt. Well then, let's get to work. We've got daylight for another few hours. I want to run surface scans before the sound cut him off. Low, deep, coming from outside or maybe below, a vibration that made the walls creak and the equipment rattle. It lasted 3 seconds, then stopped. Everyone froze. What the hell was that? Eugene asked. Brennan's face had gone pale. That's what I've been trying to tell you. That's what's been happening every night. The vibration came again, stronger this time. 2 long pulses, then silence. Vincent Kozlowski moved to the door, hand on his sidearm, face locked in concentration. That's not tectonic, he said quietly. That's not natural at all. Morrison met Shaw's eyes. Something passed between them, something that made my blood run colder than the Arctic wind. Get the equipment secured, Shaw ordered. Nobody goes outside alone, ever. Understood? We all nodded. But I was watching Vincent, watching how his hand stayed on that weapon, like he'd been expecting this, like he'd heard it before. The first 3 days at Helios fell into a routine that felt wrong. Too smooth. Too quiet except for those vibrations that came every night like clockwork. I kept the communication logs, monitored radio frequencies, typed up reports that Shaw reviewed with that same unreadable expression. Eugene and I bunked together in the smaller hut. Neither of us slept well. The cold seeped through every layer, and the sounds, God, the sounds. Ice cracking in the distance like gunshots, wind howling like something alive and hungry, and underneath it all, those deep thumps that made your chest vibrate. You ever feel like we're being watched? Eugene asked one night, staring at the ceiling. It's just ice, Eugene. Ice doesn't watch, Danny, but something out there does. I didn't argue. I'd felt it too. That sensation of eyes on your back when you walked between buildings. The way the horizon seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at it. Vincent Kozlowski kept to himself mostly, but I noticed things. How he'd stand at the perimeter markers, staring north for long stretches. How he'd check his weapon 3-4 times a day. How he never seemed surprised when those vibrations hit, like he was counting them. Jimmy tried to keep spirits up, told stories about Tennessee, about his daughter back home who wanted to be a veterinarian. He showed me her picture once, a gap-toothed kid holding a puppy, sunshine and innocence. It felt obscene looking at something that pure while standing on this frozen hell. Morrison ran drills constantly. Rope work, emergency procedures, cold weather survival. He pushed us harder than seemed necessary for a simple research support mission. One morning, after running us through evacuation protocols for the 3rd time, Eugene finally cracked. Sarge, what exactly are we preparing for? Morrison's jaw worked. Everything, Private. We prepare for everything. Dr. Brennan spent most of his time at the ice shelf edge with his equipment, mapping thermal layers, taking core samples. He'd come back to the command hut with that same confused expression, muttering about density anomalies and compression patterns that defied explanation. Dr. Reeves grew more frustrated daily. She'd catalog frozen fish fragments and dead crustaceans washed up on the ice edge, finding nothing, learning nothing. This is pointless, she told Shaw one evening. There's no active marine biology here. Whatever you're looking for is either dead or never existed. Shaw's response was always the same. Continue your work, Doctor. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Morrison woke me before dawn, his face grim in the darkness. Get dressed, full gear. Commander wants a recon sweep of the outer shelf markers. What happened? One of the seismic monitors went offline during the night, near the northern ridge. I dressed fast, fingers clumsy with cold and sleep. Outside, the team assembled. Shaw, Morrison, Vincent, Eugene, and me. Jimmy stayed back with the doctors and technicians, monitoring communications. We took 2 sleds across the ice, headlights cutting through pre-dawn darkness. The cold was vicious, the wind trying to push us sideways. Vincent drove the lead sled with Shaw. Morrison drove ours with Eugene and me holding on behind. A mile out, Vincent stopped, raised his fist. We pulled alongside. "There," Shaw said, pointing. At first, I thought it was just another pressure ridge, ice pushed up by thermal expansion. But as we got closer, my stomach dropped. Wreckage. Crushed metal frames bent at impossible angles. Torn thermal fabric frozen into the ice like someone had shredded a tent and scattered the pieces. Equipment I didn't recognize, old, covered in frost, half buried. "Jesus Christ," Eugene whispered. Morrison dismounted, moved closer. I followed, legs shaking. Not from cold. The metal supports weren't bent by wind or natural collapse. They were crushed inward, compressed by massive force. Deep gouges ran along the steel frames, scored in parallel lines like something had gripped them and squeezed. Shaw knelt beside a metal tag mostly buried in snow. She brushed ice away with her gloved hand, face tight. "This is from the Archon survey, 1999. "That mission was scrubbed," Morrison said quietly. "Officially, it never happened." "Officially," Shaw repeated, voice hollow. Vincent circled the wreckage, weapon drawn, eyes scanning the horizon. "Commander, we need to leave, now." "Not yet." Shaw pulled a camera from her pack, started documenting everything. I moved to what looked like part of a shelter frame. The thermal covering hung in strips, torn lengthwise. I touched one edge, felt how rough it was. Not cut, ripped, with tremendous force. Eugene was examining the gouges in the metal. "What the hell has claws strong enough to do this?" "Nothing natural," Vincent said. He'd moved to the far side of the wreckage, was staring at something in the ice. We joined him. Tracks. Not animal tracks. Something else. Massive displacement marks in the old ice, like something enormous had moved beneath the surface and pushed upward, cracking the frozen layer above. "Commander," Vincent's voice was tight. "We've seen enough." Shaw stood slowly, camera still in hand. "Morrison, mark these coordinates. We're bringing specialists back here to—" The ice beneath us shuddered. Not a vibration, a direct impact. Like something had struck the underside of the shelf with incredible force. We all stumbled. Eugene grabbed my arm to keep me upright. Another impact, closer. The ice cracked with a sound like a rifle shot. "Back to the sleds," Shaw shouted. "Move!" We ran. My boots slipped on the uneven surface. Morrison hauled me up by my pack when I fell. Behind us, more cracks splintered across the ice, racing outward from where we'd been standing. Vincent gunned the sled engine. Shaw jumped on behind him. We piled onto Morrison's sled, and he hit the throttle before Eugene was fully aboard. The impacts followed us, rhythmic, deliberate, like something underneath was tracking our movement. "Faster!" Eugene yelled. Morrison pushed the sled to its limit. The engine screamed in protest. Behind us, a section of ice where the wreckage sat suddenly collapsed inward, falling into darkness below. The sound of it hitting bottom never reached us. We didn't stop until we hit the outpost perimeter. Didn't speak until we were inside the command hut with the door sealed. Jimmy took one look at our faces and knew. What happened out there? Shaw pulled off her gloves, hands shaking slightly. The first time I'd seen her composure crack. "Get Dr. Brennan, now." Dr. Brennan spread the photographs across the table, hands trembling. Not from cold, from excitement mixed with fear. The images showed the wreckage in stark detail. Those impossible gouges, those crushing marks that defied explanation. "This confirms it," he said. "Something massive is down there. The density readings, the vibrations, now this. We're looking at a preserved specimen of unprecedented size." Dr. Reeves leaned over the photos, face pale. This damage wasn't caused by ice pressure. This was done by something with physical strength beyond anything in the current fossil record. Current fossil record, Shaw repeated. Meaning? Meaning we might be looking at something that predates modern classification. Something from before the last ice age, before recorded extinction events. Reeves looked up. If this is what I think it is, if something this size was flash frozen in perfect preservation. She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Vincent stood near the door, arms crossed, face dark. We should evacuate. Now. Mark the site and leave. We have our orders, Private, Shaw said. Orders don't mean shit if we're dead, ma'am. The room went silent. You didn't talk to a commanding officer like that. But Vincent didn't back down, didn't even blink. Morrison stepped between them. Commander, with respect, Kozlowski has a point. We're not equipped for this kind of operation. If that ice is unstable... I've already sent preliminary reports to Northcom, Shaw interrupted. They've authorized us to proceed with exploratory drilling. We confirm what's down there, take samples, and then we extract. You sent reports? Reeves' voice rose. When? Why weren't we consulted? Shaw's expression hardened. You're consultants, Doctor. I make the operational decisions. I watched this unfold from my position near the communications equipment, fingers frozen over the keyboard. I'd transmitted Shaw's encrypted messages myself over the past 3 days. Messages she'd written in private, encoded with ciphers I didn't have clearance to read. I'd assumed it was standard protocol. Now, I wasn't so sure. Eugene caught my eye from across the room. His expression asked the question we were all thinking. What the hell did Shaw know that we didn't? Jimmy moved to the center of the group, medic's instinct to calm tensions. Let's take a breath here. We're all tired, we're all cold. Maybe we should rest, reassess in the morning. There's no time, Brennan said, still staring at the photos. The ice shelf is destabilizing. Whatever's causing those vibrations, it's accelerating. If we don't investigate now, we might lose access entirely. Or we might trigger a collapse that kills us all, Vincent said. Shaw's jaw tightened. We follow our mission parameters. Tomorrow morning we establish a drill site over the densest readings. We go down, we get samples, we document everything. That's final. She dismissed us. The meeting broke apart in uncomfortable silence. I gathered the transmission logs, noticed Vincent lingering near Shaw's desk. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at her locked equipment case, the one she never opened in front of anyone. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, something worse was building. That night, I couldn't sleep. Eugene was out cold, snoring through his exhaustion. I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my mother's voice on that phone call back at Elmendorf, thinking about the hardware store and paint cans, and a life that felt impossibly far away. The vibration came at 0200 hours, stronger than ever before. Long, deep pulses that made the walls groan and equipment rattle off shelves. I sat up, heart hammering. Eugene jerked awake. What the? Another pulse. Then another. 3 in sequence, each stronger than the last. I pulled on my boots and jacket, stumbled outside. Others were already there. Jimmy, Morrison, Vincent, all staring north toward the shelf. You feel that? Jimmy asked, breath fogging in the frigid air. Something's wrong, Vincent said. That pattern, it's not random. Morrison's face was stone. It's communication. Communication? Eugene had joined us, wrapped in his thermal blanket. What the hell does that mean? Before anyone could answer, the ice beneath Helios buckled. Not a collapse, just a shift, like the entire shelf had moved 6 inches to the left. We all stumbled, grabbing whatever was closest for balance. Shaw emerged from the command hut, fully dressed like she'd been waiting for this. Brennan, I need readings. The doctor appeared moments later, scanner in hand, glasses fogged and crooked. He held the device toward the north, watching the screen with growing horror. "Commander, the mass is moving. Not much, maybe a few feet, but it's definitely mobile. And the ice around it is cracking, multiple fracture lines forming in a radius pattern." "Radius from what?" Reeves demanded, appearing beside him. Brennan's voice dropped to from a central point, like something's trying to break through. The night air filled with a new sound, not a vibration, a crack, sharp and clear, coming from the direction of the shelf. We all turned toward it. In the pale moonlight reflecting off the ice, we could see it. A dark line appearing across the white expanse, growing longer by the second. A fissure opening in the frozen surface, running straight toward our position like a scar being carved into the earth. Shaw's radio crackled. One of the technicians, Webb, his voice, "Commander, the radar's showing a void. A massive cavity directly beneath the northern shelf. It wasn't there yesterday, I swear it wasn't." The fissure reached the outer perimeter marker. The ice around it shattered upward in a spray of frozen chunks. And from deep below, so deep it shouldn't have been possible to hear, came a sound that stopped my heart. A groan, long, resonant, almost organic, like something enormous stirring from ancient sleep. Vincent pulled his sidearm, chambered around. His face was locked in an expression I'd never seen before. Not fear, grim recognition. "Morrison," he said, "whatever's in your service record that you're not telling us about, now would be a really good time to share." Morrison didn't answer, just kept staring at that widening fissure, jaw working. Shaw lowered her radio slowly. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made my skin crawl. "Gear up, all personnel. We go down at first light." "Go down?" Reeves nearly shouted. "Into that? Are you insane?" Shaw met her eyes. "Those are our orders, Doctor. Those have always been our orders." And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't a research mission. This was never a research mission. We'd been sent here to find something they'd known was here all along. Morning came without sunrise. Just a pale gray smear across the horizon that passed for daylight this far north. I hadn't slept. None of us had. We'd spent the hours checking equipment, running through safety protocols that felt increasingly meaningless. Jimmy pulled me aside while I was testing the portable radio repeater. His eyes were bloodshot, face drawn. "Danny, I need you to do something for me." He pressed a folded letter into my hand. "If something happens down there, if I don't make it back, make sure this gets to my daughter. Her address is on the envelope." My throat tightened. "Jimmy, don't. Just promise me, kid. Promise me she'll know her daddy was thinking about her." I nodded, unable to speak, and tucked the letter deep into my inner pocket where the cold couldn't reach it. The fissure had widened overnight. What had been a crack was now a jagged opening 15 feet across, dropping into darkness that our floodlights couldn't penetrate. Steam rose from it in ghostly columns, carrying a smell I couldn't place. Ancient. Wrong. Dr. Brennan stood at the edge with his scanning equipment, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "The readings are extraordinary. The cavity below is enormous, cathedral-sized, and the ice formations, they're older than anything I've ever documented. We're talking pre-Holocene, possibly older." Dr. Reeves stood farther back, arms wrapped around herself. "This is madness. That ice could collapse at any moment." "Which is why we move quickly," Shaw said, checking the descent lines Morrison and Vincent had rigged. "We go down as a team, get visual confirmation of the specimen, take tissue samples if possible, and return. 2 hours maximum." "And if the ice shifts while we're down there?" Eugene asked. Shaw didn't answer. Vincent finished checking his harness, turned to Morrison. "Sarge, you ever work recovery ops in unstable environments?" "Alaska, 97, Morrison said quietly. "Earthquake aftermath. Pulled 16 people out of collapsed structures." He paused. lost 3 in the process. The silence that followed was heavier than the gear we carried. Shaw clipped into the primary line. "I go first. Morrison, you're second. Hutchinson, you handle communications topside with Webb and Holland. Kozlowski, you're with the descent team. Brennan, Reeves, you follow after Morrison secures the first platform." "Wait," I said. "I'm staying up here?" "You're our communications link, Private. You keep us connected to topside and monitor for any structural changes. That's an order." Part of me felt relieved. Part of me felt like a coward. Eugene clapped my shoulder. "Lucky bastard," he whispered, but his eyes said he wished he was staying up top too. They descended, one by one. Shaw first, disappearing into that dark mouth like she was being swallowed. Morrison followed, rope creaking under his weight. Then Vincent, moving with practiced efficiency, rifle slung across his back. Jimmy went next, medical pack secured tight to his chest. Eugene gave me one last look before clipping in. "See you in 2 hours, Danny." 2 hours, I repeated, trying to believe it. Dr. Brennan practically ran to the edge, eager despite his fear. Dr. Reeves followed reluctantly, jaw set in grim determination. I watched them descend through the portable camera feed Webb had set up. The walls of the fissure were striated in layers of blue and white, each one representing thousands of years of frozen time. 40 feet down, the team reached a natural ledge where Morrison secured additional anchors. "Topside, this is Shaw," her voice crackled through my headset. "Descent proceeding normally. Ice walls stable so far." "Copy that, Commander," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. They kept going. 60 feet. 80. The camera feed grew darker, the walls transitioning from blue ice to something older, almost black in places. Ancient sediment frozen in time. At 120 feet, the fissure opened into something massive. "Jesus Christ," Morrison's voice came through, barely a whisper. Webb and I watched the camera feed with growing dread. The cavity was enormous, just as Brennan had predicted. But it wasn't empty. Ice formations hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, each one catching the team's headlamps and reflecting light in eerie patterns. The floor sloped downward in uneven ridges, and there, embedded in the far wall, was the mass. Even through the grainy camera feed, even from this distance, it was unmistakable. A creature, massive, perfectly preserved in crystal-clear ice. "Oh my God," Brennan's voice shook with awe. "It's real. It's actually real." The thing was easily 60 feet long, maybe more. Shark-like in basic form, but far larger than any great white ever documented. Its mouth hung open in mid-strike, revealing rows of triangular teeth, each the size of a man's hand. Massive pectoral fins stretched outward like frozen wings. The tail curved powerfully to one side, caught in the moment before what would have been a devastating strike. But the eyes, even frozen, even dead for thousands of years, those eyes seemed to hold something. Intelligence, hunger, rage. "That's a megalodon," Reeves' voice came through, trembling. "But that's impossible. They went extinct 2 million years ago. Nothing could preserve tissue for that long." "Flash freeze," Brennan said, moving closer to the wall. "Catastrophic temperature drop. The tissue froze so fast that ice crystals didn't have time to form and rupture the cells. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect." Vincent's voice cut through the wonder with cold reality. "Commander, the ice around the specimen is cracking. Fresh stress fractures. This thing isn't stable." He was right. Even I could see it through the camera feed. Thin white lines spiderwebbing across the surface around the creature's head. "Acknowledged," Shaw said. "Brennan, set up your drill. We take samples from the dorsal ridge and evacuate. 15 minutes. Morrison moved to help Brennan with the equipment, but I noticed Vincent hanging back, weapon drawn, scanning the cavern like he expected something to emerge from the shadows. Eugene positioned himself near the creature's head, setting up floodlights for better visibility. The additional light revealed more details. scars along the creature's flank, marks that looked like they came from something even bigger. What the hell could fight a megalodon? Jimmy stayed near the ascent lines, monitoring everyone's condition with that calm medic focus, but even he looked shaken. The drill powered up, its whine echoing through the cavern. Brennan positioned it carefully against the ice near the creature's dorsal fin. "Starting extraction," he announced. The bit touched ice. Steam rose. The drill bit deeper, and somewhere in the darkness of that ancient cavern, something shifted. Not the ice, not the walls, something else. A vibration rolled through the chamber, deep and resonant. The same sound we'd been hearing at night, but closer now. Stronger, right beneath our feet. "Commander," Webb said urgently beside me, staring at his radar screen. "I'm picking up movement, not seismic. Something in the cavity behind the specimen. Something—" The screen went white with interference. Then the feed from the descent camera cut to static. My radio erupted with shouting. Multiple voices, panic cutting through military discipline. "The wall's cracking! Get back from... Everyone to the lines, now!" Through the chaos, I heard Vincent's voice, cold and clear. I knew it. I fucking knew it. And beneath all of it, a sound that made my blood freeze. A crack. Not small, not distant, massive, like the world itself was splitting open. The fissure mouth above the descent point widened suddenly. Ice chunks the size of cars tumbled into the darkness below. "Webb!" I grabbed his arm. "Tell me they're getting out!" He was frantically trying to restore the camera feed, hands shaking. "I don't know. The repeater's down. I can't—" The radio crackled once. Shaw's voice, barely audible through static and the sound of destruction. "Topside, this is Shaw. We are... Ascent. Immediate. Collapsing." Then silence. "Webb, get that repeater back online," I shouted, hands shaking as I grabbed the backup radio unit. He was already tearing into the equipment case, pulling cables with desperate speed. "It's not the repeater. Something's jamming the signal. Electromagnetic interference from inside the cavity." Holland, the other technician, rushed to the fissure edge, shining a high-powered light down into the darkness. "I can't see anything. Too much ice dust in the air." The ground beneath Helios shuddered again. Not the rhythmic pulses we'd grown used to. This was different. Violent. Angry. I keyed the emergency frequency, praying someone below could hear. "Descent team, this is topside. Respond. Repeat, anyone on descent team, respond." Static. Then, faintly, a voice I barely recognized through the distortion. "Ensign. Trapped. Lower platform. Ceiling." "Say again. Who is this?" "Eugene. McCarthy. Morrison's hurt. Need..." The signal dissolved into white noise. "They're still alive." I grabbed Holland by the shoulder. "We need to get down there." "Are you insane?" Webb spun around, face pale. "We don't even know if the descent lines are intact. The whole cavity could be collapsing." He wasn't wrong. Through the swirling ice dust rising from the fissure, I could hear the terrible sounds of destruction below. Grinding ice, crashing impacts. And underneath it all, something else. Something that sounded almost like movement through water. Except there was no water down there. Only ancient ice and frozen time. Holland secured a safety line around his waist, started toward the edge. "I'm going down. Just to the first platform. See if I can make visual contact." "Don't be a hero," Webb warned. "We don't leave people behind," Holland said simply, and descended before anyone could stop him. I watched him disappear into the swirling darkness, rope playing out, foot by foot. The seconds stretched into eternity. My hands gripped the radio so tight my knuckles went white. "Holland, report," I called down. His voice echoed back, tinny and distant. "I'm at 40 feet. Visibility near zero. Wait, I see something." "What? What do you see?" "Rope. One of the descent lines. It's intact. Tension on it suggests someone's still clipped in below." Hope surged through me. "Can you reach it?" "Negative. It's too far from my position. I'd need to..." His voice cut off sharply. Holland? Silence. Then, barely a whisper. "Oh God, Danny, pull me up. Pull me up right now." Something in his voice made my blood run cold. "What is it? What do you see?" "Just pull me up." Webb and I grabbed the line, hauled with everything we had. Holland came up fast, boots scraping the ice wall, completely abandoning any semblance of controlled ascent. When his head cleared the edge, his eyes were wild with terror. "What happened?" Webb demanded. Holland couldn't speak for a moment, just gasped for air, pointing down into the fissure with a trembling hand. "The creature, the frozen one, it's not in the wall anymore." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean the ice around it collapsed. The whole section fell away, and the thing..." He swallowed hard. "It's down there, in the chamber, and I swear to God I saw it move." "It's frozen solid," Webb said. "You saw ice shifting, that's all." "No," Holland's voice was absolutely certain. "I've been working ice sites for 6 years. I know the difference between falling ice and something moving under its own power. That thing shifted position. The jaw closed. I saw it." Before we could process this, the radio crackled back to life. Vincent's voice, strained but controlled. "Topside, this is Kozlowski, do you read?" I nearly dropped the radio in my rush to respond. "Vincent, yes, we read you. What's your status?" "We're trapped on a lower ledge about 90 feet down. The main ascent route collapsed. Morrison's injured, possible broken ribs. Shaw's unconscious but breathing. Dalton's with them both. McCarthy and the doctors are on a separate platform 30 feet below us. The cavity walls are unstable. We need emergency extraction now." "Copy that. Can you climb to us?" "Negative. The walls between our positions are sheer ice, no anchor points. We'd need..." He paused, and I heard the conflict in his voice. "We'd need to go down before we can go up. There's a slope that leads to McCarthy's position, then a possible climb route from there. Down. Deeper into that collapsing nightmare where something impossible might be waking up." "Vincent," I said slowly, "Holland says the specimen is no longer secured in the wall. Can you confirm?" Too long. When Vincent answered, his voice was flat. "Confirmed. The creature fell during the initial collapse. It's on the chamber floor below us. Still encased in ice, but mobile. It's sliding with the tilting floor, moving toward the lower platforms. Toward Eugene. Toward Dr. Brennan and Dr. Reeves. Can they get out of its path?" "There is no out. The cavity is sealed on 3 sides. The only exit is up, and that's where the creature is sliding. It's going to..." Another violent tremor cut him off. I heard shouting in the background, the sound of ice cracking. When Vincent came back, his voice was tight with pain. "Shaw's awake. She's ordering me to get Morrison and Dalton to safety first. Says McCarthy and the doctors can hold position until we secure the upper line." "That's suicide!" I shouted into the radio. "That thing is heading right for them." "I'm aware, Private." Vincent's voice carried a weight I couldn't fully understand. "But I follow orders, even the ones that are wrong." The radio clicked off. I looked at Webb and Holland, both staring at me with the same horrified realization. Shaw was writing off half the team to save herself and the others. Standard triage logic, save who you can save. But it felt wrong. It felt like murder. Webb grabbed my arm. "Danny, your communications. You outrank us in this situation. What are your orders?" My orders. I was 22 years old, barely 8 months in the service, and they were asking me to decide who lived and who died. I thought about Jimmy's letter in my pocket, about Eugene's jokes that got quieter the farther north we came, about my mother's voice on that phone telling me to be careful. I keyed the radio to a frequency I wasn't supposed to know about, the emergency command channel Shaw had used for her encrypted transmissions. "This is Private First Class Daniel Hutchinson at Outpost Helios. We have personnel trapped in an unstable ice cavity with imminent danger of complete collapse. Requesting immediate emergency airlift, all available units." Webb's eyes went wide. Danny, you can't just... I already did. The response came faster than I expected. A cold, clipped voice I didn't recognize. Helios, this is Northcom Actual. Negative on emergency extraction. Site is under special protocols. All personnel are to remain on station until... There won't be any personnel to remain if you don't send help. I cut him off. Protocol be damned. We have people dying down there. Private, you are ordered to stand down and... I switched off the radio. Looked at Webb and Holland. To hell with their protocols. We're getting everyone out. Holland nodded once. Tell us what you need. What I needed was a miracle. What I had was 300 feet of spare rope, 2 portable winches, and a desperate plan that would probably kill us all. But it was better than leaving them to die. I grabbed my gear and started rigging a new descent line. Webb, you maintain topside communications. Holland, you're with me. We're going down. You're not trained for technical rescue, Webb protested. Neither were they, I said, clipping into my harness, and I'm not leaving them in that hole. As I stepped toward the edge, the ground trembled again. Softer this time, almost rhythmic, like something massive was learning to move again after sleeping for 2 million years. The descent was worse than anything I'd imagined. Every foot down felt like dropping into a throat that was slowly closing. Ice dust choked the air. My headlamp carved thin beams through the murk that showed nothing but swirling white and the occasional glimpse of ancient blue walls. Holland descended beside me, breathing hard through his mask. We'd rigged ourselves on separate lines for safety, but close enough to help each other if one line failed. Below us, the sounds of destruction echoed up from the depths. Cracking ice, falling debris, and something else. A low, resonant groaning that vibrated through the rope in my hands. Danny. Holland's voice came through the radio, tight with fear. You hear that? Yeah. That's not ice settling. I know. We dropped past the 60-foot mark. The walls here were scarred with fresh gouges where falling ice had scraped them raw. My boots touched a narrow ledge, and I swung myself onto it, Holland landing beside me seconds later. From here, we could see down into the main cavity. My breath caught. The chamber was chaos. Massive ice formations had collapsed, creating a landscape of frozen rubble and jagged pillars. Emergency light sticks marked positions where our people were trapped, small points of red and green in the darkness. And there, dominating the chamber floor, was the creature. The ice encasing it had fractured into massive sections but hadn't fully broken apart. The megalodon looked like it was trapped in a shattered glass coffin, each piece still locked around portions of its body. But those pieces were moving, sliding, grinding against each other as the tilting floor caused the whole mass to shift downward, toward the lower platforms where Eugene, Dr. Brennan, and Dr. Reeves were trapped. There, Holland pointed. 50 feet down, 2 o'clock. That's McCarthy's position. I saw them. 3 figures huddled on an ice ledge barely big enough for one person, pressed against the wall. Eugene's light stick waved frantically when he saw our headlamps. Eugene, this is Danny. Can you hear me? His voice came through weak and crackling. Danny, thank God, the ice is giving way. We've got maybe minutes before this whole ledge drops. Where are the others? Shaw and her group are above us somewhere. Lost visual contact when the main wall collapsed. Jimmy's with them. Morrison was hurt bad, Danny. Real bad. My chest tightened. We're coming to you first. Can you climb if we get you a line? Brennan's hurt his ankle. Reeves can climb. I can help Brennan, but we need a secure anchor point. Holland was already setting up the rigging, hammering ice screws into the frozen wall with mechanical precision. I can get 1 line down to them, maybe 2 if we use the auxiliary cable. Another tremor shook the cavity. Larger chunks of ceiling ice broke free, crashing into the chamber below. One piece the size of a car smashed into the frozen creature's tail section. The impact sent visible cracks racing across the ice coffin, and the tail moved. Just slightly. Just enough to confirm what Holland had said topside wasn't panic or imagination. The thing was thawing. Impossibly, it was thawing. "How?" I whispered. "How is that possible?" Holland's face was grim. "Geothermal heat from below, maybe. If there's a volcanic vent under this shelf, the collapse could have exposed the specimen to warmer temperatures. Even a few degrees could start the process." "In less than an hour?" "Danny, that thing's been frozen for 2 million years in perfect stasis. We have no idea what kind of biological processes might restart once the temperature rises even slightly. For all we know..." A sound cut him off. Deep, resonant, organic. It came from the creature. Not a roar, not a groan. Something between the two. Like lungs that hadn't drawn breath since the Pliocene epoch were remembering how. "Oh, Jesus," Holland breathed. "Oh, Jesus Christ." "Focus!" I grabbed his shoulder hard. "Get that line down to Eugene, now!" He nodded, hands shaking, and started lowering the rope. I watched it descend through the murk, praying it would reach before the ledge gave way. Eugene caught it on the first try. I could have wept with relief. "Secure Brennan first, Reeves second, you come last." "Copy." I watched them work through the swirling dust. Dr. Brennan, even injured, moved with desperate speed. They got him clipped into the harness, and Holland and I started hauling. Every pull burned my shoulders, but we kept going, hand over hand, foot by foot. Brennan was halfway up when the creature's jaw moved. Not much, maybe 6 inches. But the mouth that had been frozen open in mid-strike slowly, ponderously closed part-way. The sound of grinding ice and shifting frozen muscle echoed through the entire cavity. "It's alive," Brennan gasped as we pulled him over the ledge. His face was white as the ice around us. "Sweet, merciful God, it's still alive." "That's impossible," Holland said, but his voice carried no conviction. "Flash freeze," Brennan panted, clutching his twisted ankle. "Preserved everything, every cell, every neural pathway. If the thawing happens gradually enough, if the cellular damage is minimal..." He looked at me with wild eyes. "We don't know. We've never seen anything like this. Nothing in nature can survive being frozen for millions of years, but we don't know." I lowered the rope again. "Reeves, you're next." The marine biologist climbed with practiced efficiency, moving faster than Brennan despite her terror. When she reached our ledge, she grabbed my arm hard. "We have to collapse this cavity," she said urgently. "Seal it. Bury that thing again before..." A massive crack split the air. The platform where Eugene stood lurched sideways, tilting at a 45-degree angle. He scrambled for purchase, boots slipping. "Eugene!" I screamed. He caught the safety line with one hand, body swinging out over the drop. Below him, the creature's massive head shifted again. More ice fell away from around the snout. I could see exposed skin now, gray, scarred, impossibly preserved. And the eye. One massive eye, partially freed from its frozen prison, rolled in its socket, looking up, looking at Eugene. "Pull him up!" Reeves shouted. "Pull him up, now!" Holland and I hauled with everything we had. Eugene spun on the line, struggling to get his feet against the wall. The creature's head tilted, following his movement, tracking him. "It sees him," Brennan whispered in horror. "It's conscious. Oh God, it's conscious." Eugene was 30 feet below us when the creature's tail section, partially freed from the ice, swung in a slow, powerful arc. It smashed into an ice pillar, shattering it completely. The impact sent a shockwave through the cavity. The platform Eugene had been standing on broke free entirely, tumbling into the darkness below. "Don't stop pulling!" I screamed at Holland. "Don't you dare stop!" 20 feet. 15. Eugene's face was locked in concentration, teeth gritted, hands white-knuckled on the rope. The creature's mouth opened wider. A sound emerged from deep within its chest. Not quite a roar, more like a challenge, like a predator announcing itself to prey. 10 feet. 5. Eugene's hand reached up. I grabbed it, pulled with strength I didn't know I had. Holland hauled from his position. Together, we dragged Eugene over the ledge just as another section of the cavity floor collapsed. He lay there gasping, shaking, eyes squeezed shut. It looked at me. It looked right at me. I know. Danny, that thing is waking up. I know. Below us, more ice cracked away from the creature's body. A pectoral fin flexed slightly, testing its range of motion. The tail swept again, this time with more control, more purpose. Reeves grabbed my radio. Vincent, Shaw, anyone! You need to get out now. The specimen is viable. Repeat, the specimen is waking up. Static. Then Vincent's voice, strained. Copy that. We're trying. Morrison can't climb. His ribs punctured his lung. Jimmy's treating him, but we need... An enormous crash drowned out his words. A section of the cavity ceiling, weakened by all the stress, gave way entirely. Tons of ice poured down like a frozen waterfall. And when the dust settled, I saw them. Shaw, Morrison, Jimmy, and Vincent, trapped on a ledge that was now completely isolated. No way up, no way down. The walls around them sheer and crumbling. And between us and them, filling the center of the cavity like a nightmare made real, was the creature. Most of its ice coffin had shattered. It lay on the tilting floor, massive body partially exposed, still sluggish, but growing more active by the moment. Each movement sent tremors through the entire structure. Jimmy's voice came through my radio, eerily calm. Danny, that letter I gave you, make sure it gets to my daughter, okay? Jimmy, don't. Tell her Daddy loved her. Tell her I was thinking about her when... The creature's head rose 6 feet off the ground. The mouth opened fully, revealing rows of triangular teeth each as long as my forearm. And it roared. Not the sound of an animal, the sound of something from an age when humans didn't exist, when the ocean was ruled by apex predators that knew no equal. The sound of rage at being imprisoned in ice for 2 million years. The roar shook the entire cavity. Ice rained down from the ceiling in sheets. I pressed myself against the wall, feeling the vibration in my chest, in my bones, in my teeth. It wasn't just sound, it was power. Ancient, terrible power. We have to do something, Reeves screamed over the noise. But what? What could we possibly do against something like that? Vincent's voice cut through the chaos on the radio, unnaturally calm. Hutchinson, listen to me carefully. You need to get your people out, now. Don't wait for us. Negative, we're not leaving you. That's an order, Private. Shaw's voice, sharp even through pain. You have civilians with you. Get them topside. That's your priority. Morrison's labored breathing came through the channel. Kid. She's right. Get them out. I looked at Eugene, at Dr. Brennan clutching his ankle, at Reeves with tears freezing on her cheeks, at Holland already preparing the ascent lines. They were looking at me, waiting for me to decide. Below, the creature was finding its strength. The massive body flexed, tail sweeping in wider arcs. It rolled slightly, trying to right itself on the sloping floor. More ice shattered away with each movement. Jimmy's voice came through, softly soft. Danny, remember what I told you? About my daughter? About... I remember, Jimmy, but you're going to tell her yourself. You hear me? You're getting out of there. Vincent cut in, voice tight. Morrison can't be moved. Not without killing him. Shaw's leg is broken. I can carry one, maybe, but not both. And that thing... He paused. It's between us and any viable exit route. I stared down at them. 4 people trapped on that ledge. 4 lives depending on a decision I wasn't qualified to make. Then Vincent said something that changed everything. Danny, I need you to know something. This mission was never what they told us. Shaw knew. I knew. We were briefed before we ever left Elmendorf. Shaw's voice crackled with fury. Kozlowski, stand down. That's classified. To hell with classified, Vincent roared. These people deserve the truth before they die. Danny, they sent us here because they knew something was down here. This wasn't discovery. This was confirmation. They've known about this thing for years, since the Archon survey in 1999. My blood ran cold. What happened to the Archon team? Silence. Then Vincent, voice hollow. The same thing that's about to happen to us. They woke it up too. It killed 6 people before the ice sealed it again. Command buried the whole thing. And then they sent us to try again. Eugene grabbed my arm. You knew? You both knew we were walking into this? I didn't know about the creature, Vincent said. I swear I didn't. I was told it was a recovery operation for classified materials. I was special forces, counterintelligence. I thought it was weapons tech or something. I didn't know until... His voice cracked. I didn't know until we found the wreckage. Then I recognized the codes. Recognized what kind of mission this really was. Shaw's voice was ice. Kozlowski, you're finished. Court-martial doesn't begin to... Save it, Commander. Vincent's laugh was bitter. Neither of us is walking out of here. The creature's head swiveled toward their ledge. The eyes, both fully visible now, tracked their movement with horrifying intelligence. This wasn't a mindless predator. This was something that had ruled the prehistoric oceans through cunning and strength. And it was hungry. Morrison tried to speak, coughed blood instead. Jimmy was working frantically, trying to stabilize him, but we could all see it was hopeless. The man was dying. Vincent made a sound I'll never forget. Half sob, half laugh. You know what's funny? I've done 3 tours, survived firefights, IEDs, missions that should have killed me 10 times over. And I'm going to die because I followed orders from people who saw us as expendable. Vincent, I started. Get them out, Danny. That's all that matters now. Get them out. Shaw tried to speak, but Vincent cut his radio. Then he did something I didn't expect. He started climbing down, toward the creature. What the hell are you doing? Shaw's scream was raw. Vincent moved with purpose, descending the ice wall with the skill of someone who'd trained for exactly this kind of terrain. He had his rifle unslung, checking the magazine. Jimmy understood first. No, Vincent, no. Keep Morrison comfortable, Vincent called back up. Give Danny time to get the others clear. That's all we can do now. He was going to distract it, draw it away from their position, give them precious minutes. Give us time to escape. Vincent, please, Reeves shouted. There has to be another way. There isn't. He reached the cavity floor, boots crunching on broken ice. The creature's head swiveled toward him immediately. Hey! Vincent fired a shot into the air. The sound cracked through the chamber. Yeah, you prehistoric bastard! Over here! The megalodon's massive body shifted, focused entirely on Vincent now. He ran, sprinting across the tilting floor toward the far side of the cavity, firing shots to keep the creature's attention. And it worked. The thing pursued him with increasing speed, tail propelling it forward in powerful sweeps, jaws snapping at the air. Move! Eugene grabbed Dr. Brennan. We have to move now. Holland was already hauling Reeves up the rope. I helped Eugene with Brennan, both of us pulling, climbing, adrenaline drowning out the burning in our muscles. Below, Vincent led the creature on a deadly chase through the collapsing chamber. He dodged between ice pillars, used every piece of cover. But the megalodon was learning, adapting. Each movement came faster than the last. We reached our original ledge, kept climbing, 60 feet up, 80. Vincent's voice came through my radio one last time. Calm, almost peaceful. Danny, tell them I didn't follow orders at the end. Tell them I chose something better. Vincent, the scream that followed wasn't his. It was the creature's. A roar of triumph. Then silence on the radio. Just silence. We kept climbing. Tears froze on my face. Eugene was sobbing openly. Reeves prayed in whispered Spanish. Brennan just climbed mechanically, face blank with shock. 100 feet. 120. The surface was close, so close. Below, Morrison's labored breathing came through the radio. Then Jimmy's voice, singing softly. A lullaby. The same one I'd heard him hum sometimes during night watch. Shaw said nothing, just listened to her men die. At 140 feet, I heard the final collapse. The entire lower cavity gave way with a roar like the world ending. Ice, rock, the creature, everything, falling into some deeper abyss we'd never mapped. The radio went dead. All of them. Gone. Webb's face appeared at the fissure edge. "Grab my hand!" He pulled me up. Holland hauled Reeves. Eugene climbed under his own power, dragging Brennan with him. We lay there on solid ice, gasping, shaking, alive when we shouldn't be. The fissure behind us groaned once more, then began sealing itself. Ice grinding together, snow collapsing inward, the earth swallowing its secrets again. Within minutes, it looked like nothing had ever been there. 4 of us made it out. 4 out of 9. I rolled onto my back, stared at the gray Arctic sky, and felt Jimmy's letter crumbling in my pocket. I'd kept my promise. I'd survived. But the cost was written in blood on ice that would never melt. And somewhere deep below, entombed again in frozen darkness, something ancient waited. Waited for the next time someone was foolish enough to disturb its sleep. The helicopters came 3 hours later, not the supply transport we'd arrived on. Black, unmarked aircraft, just like Vincent had described. They knew before we even called. They'd been waiting. Men in tactical gear swarmed outpost Helios within minutes of landing. No names, no unit patches, no questions about our well-being. They moved like a machine designed for one purpose: erasure. I sat in the command hut, thermal blanket around my shoulders, watching them work. Eugene was beside me, face blank, staring at nothing. Reeves was being treated by a medic who wouldn't meet her eyes. Dr. Brennan sat with his ankle wrapped, calculations under his breath, like numbers could make sense of what we'd witnessed. Webb and Holland were already being interviewed separately. I could hear raised voices through the thin walls, arguments cut short by clipped commands. A man entered the hut, tall, late 40s, wearing civilian cold weather gear that probably cost more than my annual salary. He carried himself with authority that didn't need a uniform. "Private Hutchinson." Not a question. "Yes, sir." He pulled up a chair, sat across from me. His eyes were gray and cold as the ice outside. "My name is not important. What is important is that you understand the situation you're in." I said nothing, just waited. "A tragic accident occurred today. Unstable ice conditions during a routine geological survey. 4 personnel lost in a catastrophic shelf collapse." He spoke like he was reading from a script. "Lieutenant Commander Ellen Shaw, Sergeant William Morrison, Corporal James Dalton, and Private First Class Vincent Kozlowski. Heroes who died in service to their country. That's not what happened." "That is exactly what happened, Private." His voice didn't rise, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You experienced severe environmental stress, cold exposure, oxygen deprivation, possible hypothermia. Memory becomes unreliable under such conditions. You saw ice formations, shadows, natural phenomena that the traumatized mind interprets as something more. I know what I saw." He leaned forward. "Do you? Because I have your psychological evaluation from basic training, Private Hutchinson. History of anxiety, borderline sleep disorder, recommended for non-combat roles. A person with your profile, under extreme stress, might experience vivid hallucinations, might convince themselves they witnessed impossible things." My hands balled into fists. "The others saw it too, all of us. The others are being debriefed separately, and they're all reaching the same conclusion. Environmental stress, traumatic collapse. No biological specimens, no classified discoveries. Just a terrible accident that cost brave men and women their lives." He pulled out a folder, set it on the table. Inside was a pre-written statement, my signature line blank at the bottom. "You'll sign this. You'll repeat this version during your official debrief, and then you'll return to regular duty with a commendation for bravery under adverse conditions. Your family will be proud. Your service record will show exemplary conduct. And if I don't?" His smile was colder than the Arctic wind. "Then we'll have to consider that the environmental trauma was more severe than initially assessed. that you require extended psychiatric treatment at a secure facility, that your reliability as a witness to anything is permanently compromised. Your mother in Ohio, your sister Beth, they'd be so worried about you. Mental health struggles can be so difficult for families. The threat was barely veiled. Sign or be disappeared into a system that would label me insane. I looked at Eugene. He'd already signed. I could see it in his defeated slouch. The way his eyes wouldn't meet mine. They'd gotten to him first, broken him quick. Dr. Reeves was being led to another helicopter, hands zip-tied. She was shouting about evidence, about truth, about responsibility. They put a bag over her head and pushed her inside. The helicopter lifted off immediately. "Where are you taking her?" I asked. "Dr. Reeves is being transferred to a facility better equipped to handle her psychological trauma." He pushed the folder closer. "Don't make the same mistake she did, Private. Sign the statement. Go home. Live your life. Forget this place." I thought about Vincent climbing down to face that thing. About Jimmy singing a lullaby as he died. About Morrison bleeding out on frozen stone. About Shaw, who'd known, who'd sent us all into that nightmare knowing what waited below. They deserved better than this lie. But they were dead. And I was alive. And sometimes survival means swallowing truth that tastes like poison. I picked up the pen. My hand shook as I signed Daniel Hutchinson at the bottom of the page. The man smiled, not warmly. "Good choice, Private. Your transport leaves in 20 minutes. You'll be at Elmendorf by evening. 3 days medical leave, then you return to communications duty." This conversation never happened. Outpost Helios never happened. You've never been north of the Beaufort. Understood? Understood. He stood, took the folder, and left without another word. I sat there in the empty hut, listening to them dismantle everything outside, taking equipment, burning documents, erasing Helios from existence like it had never been. Webb came in, eyes red. "They're letting us go together. Holland's already on the first helicopter out." He sat heavily beside me. "Did you sign?" "Yeah. Me too." He laughed bitterly. "They told me I hallucinated, that the radar readings were atmospheric interference, that the camera footage was corrupted by electromagnetic pulses from the ice. They had an explanation for everything." "Where's Brennan?" "Already gone. Separate flight. They kept him sedated, said he was in shock." Webb rubbed his face. "Maybe we were, Danny. Maybe we really did just lose our minds out here." I pulled Jimmy's letter from my pocket. It was real, solid, proof that he'd existed, that he'd known something terrible was going to happen. "I have to deliver this," I said quietly, "to his daughter." Webb's expression turned grim. "They told me Jimmy Dalton had no next of kin. Wife died 3 years ago. Daughter's in foster care, location classified. You won't find her." The words hit like a physical blow. They'd thought of everything, sealed every avenue. Even a father's last letter to his child would never reach its destination. I stared at the envelope. Jimmy's neat handwriting, his daughter's name, Sarah Dalton, and an address in Tennessee that probably didn't exist anymore. "What do we do?" I whispered. Webb had no answer. 20 minutes later, we were loaded onto a helicopter. Eugene sat across from me, staring at his hands. Holland was already asleep, or pretending to be. Webb stared out the window as Helios shrank below us. The outpost looked peaceful from the air. Just prefab buildings and snow. No sign of the nightmare beneath. No evidence of the fissure that had swallowed 4 lives. By the time we landed at Elmendorf, it was full dark. They separated us immediately. Different barracks, different schedules. Making sure we couldn't compare stories, couldn't build a unified narrative. I spent 3 days in medical observation. Doctors checked vitals, asked careful questions, watched my reactions, looking for cracks in the official story. I gave them nothing. On the 4th day, they released me to duty, back to communications work like nothing had happened. The other personnel gave me strange looks. Word had gotten around that something went wrong up north, but nobody knew details. I called my mother that night from the base phone. "Danny! Oh, thank God! We heard there was an accident." "I'm fine, Ma. Just some people got hurt. I'm okay." "The news said 4 soldiers died in an ice collapse. They said you were there." "I was. But I'm okay, I promise." "Come home, Danny, please. Just come home." "I can't, Ma. Not yet. My tour isn't up." We talked for 20 minutes. I told her nothing real. Just surface details, safe stories. When I hung up, I felt emptier than the Arctic wasteland. 3 months passed. Eugene was transferred to a base in Germany. Webb took early discharge, moved back to Michigan. Holland disappeared entirely. No forwarding information, no contact details, just gone. Dr. Brennan went back to his university position. I checked once. His published papers never mentioned the Arctic again. Just dry glaciology studies in safer regions. Dr. Reeves was never heard from again. Her name vanished from all professional registers, like she'd never existed. I kept Jimmy's letter, hidden in my footlocker, wrapped in plastic to protect it from moisture. Sometimes I'd take it out at night, hold it in my hands, and remember that everything we experienced was real. A year later, I was sitting in the communications hut when an encrypted message came through on the channel Shaw had used. I wasn't supposed to monitor it, but old habits die hard. The message was brief. "Helios site sealed permanently. Project suspended indefinitely. All related materials classified level 5. Project. They'd called it a project. The final line made my blood freeze. Secondary site located. Greenland sector. Preliminary survey scheduled 2003. They were going to do it again. Send more people to die. More families to lose fathers, brothers, sons. I sat there staring at that screen for a long time. Then I did the only thing I could. I erased the message, cleared it from the logs, made it disappear like it had never existed. Small rebellion. Pointless, probably. But it was something. I left the service 2 years later, honorable discharge, commendation for cold weather operations. I wasn't supposed to remember. Went back to Ohio, worked at my father's hardware store, got married, had kids, built a normal life. But sometimes at night, I still hear the ice cracking, still hear Vincent's last words on the radio, still see those eyes, millions of years old, rolling in their sockets with terrible intelligence. I never told my wife what happened, never told anyone the full story. The official version is the only one that exists in any record. 4 heroes died in an ice collapse during a routine geological survey. Tragic accident. Nothing unusual. Nothing impossible. That's the truth the world knows. But I know different. And somewhere in Tennessee, a girl named Sarah Dalton grew up never knowing her father died thinking of her, never receiving his last words of love. That's the price of survival. Living with truth no one will believe. Carrying secrets that would sound like madness if spoken aloud. The ice keeps its secrets. The government keeps its secrets. And I keep mine, locked in a letter I'll never deliver, addressed to a girl I'll never find. Sometimes I wonder if that creature is still down there, still frozen, still waiting. And I wonder if those men who sent us there learned anything from what happened. But I already know the answer. They never learn. They never stop. They'll keep digging, keep searching, keep disturbing things that should stay buried. Until one day, something wakes up that they can't put back to sleep. And when that day comes, I pray I'm far away, because I've seen what lives beneath the ice, and some truths are better left frozen.